So most people in our class have glued their pieces together. They have cut them to size. They have planed them to thickness. And they have their notches cut out. And these notches, remember, we did these three, 1, 2, 3, with the dado blade. And the other one we did with a single cut because we were holding it like this over top the table saw to cut that notch out. And they were screwed together through their waist areas when we did that. So they should be identical. So right now, this person has their right side with the cleat on the inside and screwed on. You can see that there's no gaps between the cleat and the leg. So we have the second cleat here. And a lot of people in class are right now working on the cleats. Remember, we hand planed the edges here because we're going with the grain. And then we drew a line for our angle on the ends and we held those to the disc sander and we cut that angle with the disc sander. You can do that with a hand plane also, but you've got to bear in mind that you can't just come straight across because you'll chip out the back side of the grain. So it made most sense for us to go ahead and disc sand that. So now this is going to be the outside of his left leg. And here's the inside. So if we're putting our cleat on the inside of this leg here, once we have that on, we're going to have two different grain patterns here. We're going to have a cleat that's going perpendicular to the leg's grain pattern. So we want to make sure that we get our sanding done on this inside face here before we move forward. So I'm going to take my 150 grit sandpaper and I'm going to sand the inside face here down. Something I think people are noticing is that I'm going extremely slowly in sanding this. I mean, you've been watching me for about a minute and a half and you're wondering why I'm making you watch all of this. When we're sanding the inside here with an electric sander, remember the electric sander is doing all that movement for us and its vibration and oscillation. So I see a lot of people with a sander, they go like this and they're pushing, they're putting down pressure. By moving it quickly around the board and putting down a lot of pressure, it's going to result in a pattern on your board that looks like this when we go to put a finish on. You'll see these little curly, like squiggly lines here from your effort in moving that sander around so much. The lines won't show up as graphite, obviously. They'll show up as little scratches, and they will be visible at the end. Okay. I am going to sand this a little bit more on the inside here, but the other thing that we have to do is to make sure that this 1/8 inch flat on the edge of our cleats here is without graphite, because when we put it on here, if we sand that edge once attached, we're also scratching the leg in the opposite direction of the grain pattern. So it looks like this student did already sand that all off. I don't see anything on the edges. So I don't have the template here for how high up it's supposed to go from the bottom, but I do have other leg here where I have the height up from the bottom there. And we've used these a lot in class. They're combination squares. So I'm going to set this thing. So I have it loose right now. I loosened up the screw so I can move this blade back and forth in here. And I'm going to bring it, and I want you to be able to see this here. I'm going to bring it till it's up against the bottom of the foot. So now, what I'm looking at right here, from this spot here to here, that width there is the distance up from the bottom of the foot. So really what I want to do is I want to make it be the same. You know, we have a number that's in our plans here, and it says it's supposed to be 1 7/16 up from the bottom. We can see that right in here. Okay, 1 7/16 up is fine. I didn't put the last one on, and it looks like it's about a little bit wider than 1 7/16. But really the most important thing for me is that I have it identical to the other one. You know, 1 7/16 and his is 1.5. Really, it doesn't matter that much. We have it a little bit higher than the cutout here on the bottom for the feet, and that's fine. That's all we really care about. So we're going to put this one here, make sure their height is the same, that it's centered left to right. So that looks pretty good, and that's how I'm going to be putting this on here. But I'm not going to do that yet. This student has, in 2 places here, you can see through, and you can see on the back that the holes go through. And then the other 4 counterbores here have not been drilled through yet. In class, I told you that if you don't give yourself a pre-drill on something like this, if I go to drill through the cleat and then into the board, it's going to happen that as I exit the cleat and go to the board, I get a very minute shift of the board. But doing that 4 times, that minute shift multiplied times 4 is going to mean my holes will likely not line up perfectly at the end. So I want to make sure that I drill those holes, pre-drill them before. So I'm going to use a drill and some bits. So I'll take an 1/8 inch bit. Set that up, and I'm going to set my board just off the edge. Normally I wouldn't want to do this because when I drill through this as it's extended over top of the tabletop, I'm going to get a little bit of chip out. You can see on the back side there, that chip out that's there. I'm just going to remove that with my fingernail on the back side there. And since no one's going to see this, it's going to be sitting up against the board here, it's not a concern of mine. If you are concerned about the exit wounds, though, what would be the solution? The solution would be holding it onto a piece of scrap wood tightly so that as you're exiting, it's entering another piece down below it. And that would eliminate or at least reduce the amount of chip out that you're going to get there. Okay? So now I'll set this back on again. Set it to that height again that I wanted it at. Then also center it left to right, and it looks pretty darn good. So I'm pretty happy with this. The last thing I want to do is I want to make sure that when it's setting here, it is above the arc that I have at the bottom. Okay, and it is. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drill into this piece. However, if I drill all the way through, I'm going to go through my leg and come out the other side, which is going to be a hole on the outside of my legs, which is not what I want. If I set this all the way down, it still is going to come out a little bit. So I'm going to stop just shy of that. So I put my bit all the way back into the drill as much as I could, and I'm going to stop shy by quite a bit. So I'm going to go right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and screw this in. You can ask yourself, why are you not using glue here? Well, the glue is not going to be a long-term solution because we have such a wide step here, and we have the grain pattern where it's going to be expanding contraction in that direction. So the screws are going to help. The screws eventually might fail for the same reason as well, but they're going to hold for quite some time. You might ask yourself too, well, why is he using a hand screwdriver to put that in? Well, we counterbored these. We counterbored these with a bit that looked very similar to this, but it was only 3/8 in diameter. This is called a Forster bit. And a Forstner bit produces a flat bottom to it. And the screws that we're putting into this board here, where it meets the flat bottom is a triangle or a pyramid kind of thing, where it can work as a wedge to split the wood. So I don't want to go in there with an impact driver like this, because I could certainly put that screw right through my cleat into the board behind it and totally defeat the purpose of what I'm doing here. So people still do use screwdrivers, believe it or not. And I'm going to turn that in until it's nice and snug. Okay? I'll check and make sure that I still like how I am on the other side here. I did adjust that a little bit. Okay. So I am going to pre-bolt this side. I'll put that one in. Now I'll get that nice and tight. I'm not going to put all my screws in right now because I saved you guys from having to watch me sand the entire inside face of this, which I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to, so I don't forget, I'm going to mark which direction I had this thing sitting. So I'm going to put an arrow facing up. So when I put it back on again, my arrow will be up. I didn't worry about my pencil lines here because remember, I'm going to plug all these holes where these screws are so that wood's inserted in there and that it will look like I didn't use any kind of hardware fastener whatsoever. So I am going to take this cleat back off right now, sand the inside, and then I'm going to reattach it permanently. And once I have that done, we're going to meet up again and figure out how we're going to plug these things, what's going to happen in that situation there. All right? I wish we were doing this face-to-face, guys. I certainly do. But I hope everybody's making the best of what they're doing at home. I hope you're helping around the house. I know that it's not a real popular thing to do. With my kids, it's not a real popular thing to do. But it has to be done. I mean, for us all to get along and get through this and have our heads on at the end here, we want to make sure that we're helping people out, helping your family out with certain things. Okay? All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.